Good morning. Thank you for being here to watch our presentation on logistics in the time of cholera. Coronavirus is a contagious disease. The first case was found in Wuhan, China. It has since spread around the world, leading to an ongoing pandemic that has affected the global economy and trade.
But how about logistics? As we know, logistics is the physical distribution of products and specifically the part of management supply chain that designs, implements, and controls the efficient and effective regular and reverse flow and storage of products, services, and related information by their point of origin to their point of consumption in order to meet the requirements customers.
We will continue with a video about how coronavirus is changing global shipping routes.
It's hard to imagine anything more central to our globalized world than container shipping. Just one of these steel boxes carries enough goods to fill your average house. The enormous ships that transport them around the world often carry tens of thousands at a time. But, as with almost everything else about the way the world used to work, the coronavirus has thrown a spanner into the works. From the banks of Hong Kong Island, you can see plenty of idle ships. And behind the scenes, the containers they might once have carried are also sitting unused. Here in one of the world's most iconic ports that has long symbolised the relationship between East and West, this is no coincidence. In fact, the short-term impact of the coronavirus on trade in Hong Kong today might actually tell us something much deeper about the long-term future of the world's shipping industry. At the start of 2020, the coronavirus hit Chinese shipping hard. Fast forward a few months, and the flow of ships from Asia to the West has come under intense pressure. That pressure is falling in particular on the ships that carry goods to consumers in Europe and the US. And this is because the ships setting off in the East depend on shops in the West.
Europe, Italy, Spain, some of these places that have literally shut down completely. There's no opportunity for purchase at a store. In the US, a lot of the department stores also have been curtailing their hours. So this has been one of the biggest driving factors. The other side is also, of course, the production has stopped.
After opening up in the 1970s, China has transformed itself into the world's engine of manufacturing. But it's still in the West that much of its production is consumed. This arrangement consolidated the East-West shipping route as the most important artery of world trade, and one of the best indicators of the health of the world economy. As the prospect of a deep recession in the West looms over the industry, the indications are now clear. Maersk, the world's biggest container shipping company, says its East-West trade has been the worst affected part of its business. However, the fall is not as precipitous as you might expect. The importance of the container shipping industry to the smooth function of the globalized economy means that, for the most part, cranes are still operating and ships are still sailing. In May, around 40 sailings from East Asia to the west coast of America were cancelled unexpectedly. But they could easily come back if the economy recovers.
The action of pulling ships is not unprecedented. It happens year-round, and it happens spontaneously whenever a ship in the line finds that they are underutilized. They will not hesitate to pull one string or a service or a vessel. I think this is probably the first time that we've seen such a big drop, 12%. It's not huge maybe in our eyes if you think about how much volumes are still moving. But 12% is something that we have not experienced before.
Cancellations, empty containers and idle ships are, for now, short-term effects of the pandemic. It's the long-distance routes that have suffered worst. While the coronavirus has put pressure on consumption in the West, there are other longer-term threats to long-distance shipping. Most obviously, trade tensions between the US and China, which have escalated over recent weeks, look set to outlive the coronavirus pandemic. Beyond that, changes to the structure of manufacturing, including the rise of automation and the competitiveness of Chinese labour markets, could also disrupt the flow of ships globally. So, for ships the size of football fields that travel halfway around the world to bring you the phone in your hand, the pandemic might just prove to be the catalyst for far more significant and long-lasting changes.
A report, Significant Insights into Supply Chain Logistics for Asian Markets, has applied its broad experience across a range of industries and deep knowledge of divergent logistics models and providers to shine a light on the macroeconomic trends affecting the value chain in Asia. Key policy changes brought in by governments across the region and no pausing investments have brought stability. Some of these mega trends have been seen in other contexts, and observing the impact in American and European markets can be instructive. Trends that were first seen in the West are now shaping industries that use logistics in Asia. An aging population, online and convenience consumption, and high levels of consumer awareness are now common to Asia and to older economies. As with shipping, land and rail trends now seen in Asia have been processed in European markets. Fuel again is one of the biggest operating costs, with a new focus on managing the environmental footprint in an era where corporate responsiveness to environmental issues has become a significant factor. The Southeast Asian economy is in an exciting period of transformation. In recent years, Southeast Asia has become a lucrative business hub for industries around the globe. Openness to trade is evident in the expansion of global trade and the establishment of global brands in the Asian lands. Furthermore, e-commerce in Southeast Asia is growing at a tremendous pace. The industry is poised for rapid growth, and by 2025, Indonesia is expected to account for over 50% of the Southeast Asia e-commerce market. The evolution of e-commerce has also created opportunities for faster and better logistics services to ensure smooth flow of supply chain operations. As a result of rapid economic development, Southeast Asia is going through a phase of massive urbanization. A number of mega-structure improvement projects have come up to support this urban expansion. At the end of the day, it all boils down to consumer satisfaction and cost efficiency for supply chain companies to survive the competition and grow with the changing dynamics. Technology is a real superhero that can optimize supply chains in Southeast Asia, cutting down fuel costs, scaling up the speed of deliveries to the end customer, improving last mile fulfillment.
As we know, in USA, there have been a lot of consequences of the transportation and logistics industry. First of all, every dimension of economic activity was disrupted by the pandemic. Second of all, an important supply chains in the logistics and transportation industry are hampered throughout differently across air, freight, and sea sectors. Third of all, supply chain disruptions to the sector caused by pandemic could therefore impact competitiveness, economic growth, and job creation. In the next slide, we can see two pictures. Figure 1, logistics performance and GDP selected countries, is the performance of logistics before COVID-19, and in the second figure, we can see the 2020 full truckload recovery rate after COVID-19 in logistics.
The analysis of the traffic from China to Europe is reduced by 38%, while from Europe to China there is a more significant decrease of 50.9%. There is a general decrease in the number of port calls from China to Europe ports from March 2020 onwards. However, in January 2020, the Europe ports received more calls from China when compared to January 2019. This is perceived in all ship types and not limited to a certain type of ship. A similar exercise was made for port calls with the United States of America. The number of port calls by ships trading between the Europe and the US are much lower compared to the equivalent calls for the Europe and China, but not necessarily the traded volumes and especially the value of the goods. A decrease of 32.9% in port calls by ships traveling from Europe to the US was observed, and not the number of port calls from the US to Europe decreased by 39.6%. Table shows the number of Europe-China and Europe-US ship calls in 2019 and 2020. The main ship types engaged in trade between Europe and China were container ships, vehicle carriers, general cargo, gas carriers, and bulk carriers. The number of ship calls from Europe to China increased for general cargo ships, gas carriers, and bulk carriers, and decreased by 57.5% for vehicle carriers and by 56.5% for container ships, which represent the most important type of ship used for trading goods between China and Europe. In the opposite direction, that is from China to Europe, the reduction in the number of port calls for container ships has registered a much larger reduction of 38.5% and also of 38.5% for vehicle carriers. The most relevant ship types engaged in trade between Europe and the US are container ships and vehicle carriers. Contrary to the trade with China for container ships, the impact is higher on incoming voyages from the US and lower on outgoing voyages from Europe to the US. Table shows that the number of port calls by container ships dropped 41.6% from United States to Europe and only 20.4% from Europe to the US. Even though less significant in terms of volume of port calls, vehicle carriers are the ship type showing the highest reduction in the number of port calls from Europe to the United States. In the opposite direction, the reduction is of 40.5%.
But what we've learned from this current situation? For the most part, governments have responded to the crisis by designating ports, shipping, and tracking services as essential and thereby exempt from lockdown measures. The logistics companies have adopted a range of responses to these uncertainties, including, first of all, new safety protocols to protect their staff's health. Some companies have introduced new protocols on social distancing at warehouses, disinfecting work areas, or providing protective gear while giving staff unlimited unpaid time off. However, these efforts cannot guarantee protection against outbreaks in confirmed warehouses. Second of all, we have alternative modes of transport. Many companies are using creative alternatives to their go-to transport modes. Since the reduction of passenger flights has reduced airplane belly cargo capacity, companies have used charter flights to transport shipments to and from China. And third of all, adapting service offerings to current demand and safety protocols. Some larger players have been playing an important role in delivering medical supplies. Companies are also adapting to demand. Warehouses and retailers are focusing on grocery deliveries since demand is high for essential products, while companies in the last mile segment are offering no contact delivery opinions, some of which include robots.
Going forward, what's the evolution as well? The recovery and long-term impact of the pandemic on logistics may be affected by adaptations and factors such as increased dedicated air cargo capacity. The airline industry is already reallocating fleet to exclusively serve air cargo demand, increased cargo inspections and cross-border control protocols, Governments have responded to the crisis with temporary trade embargoes and export restrictions for sensitive cargo. In the longer term, logistics costs may increase due to the tighter cross-border processes and controls fueled by concerns regarding the transmission of diseases. Technology and e-commerce rise. Companies with robust digital capabilities that allow them to provide cargo visibility and do business online are at an advantage. Recovery prospects will vary by country subsector. As logistics is a diverse sector, recovery prospects will vary depending on the length of lockdowns and the duration of the following economic crisis.
At this point, we would like to thank you for your attention to our presentation by closing with a very interesting video. Thank you.